For just a few minutes, I want to talk about an internal view of the skull. So if we took the top part of the skull off and lifted that off, this is what we would see looking down inside of the skull. So what I want you to notice is that there is a bone at the front of the skull called what bone? Frontal. It is called the frontal bone. That is very lovely. And then there is a little piece right in the middle, and that is the, everybody say ethmoid bone. Ethmoid. And the ethmoid bone is interesting because there is a sticking up piece called the Crista Galli. Everybody say Crista Galli. Crista Galli. There are olfactory foramina embedded in what's called the cribriform plate. That allows smelling information to come up through your nose and go into your brain for interpretation. It is the perpendicular plate of the ethmoid that extends downward to meet with the vomer to form that middle partition in the nasal cavity. And then there are some foramina. There is the foramen, Lacerum, Ovalle, and Spinosum. And the way that I remember the order of these is line of sight. In gaming, it's important to have the boss in full view to be able to get aim at the boss monster. The first foramen is the foramen Lacerum, Ovalle, and Spinosum. This is how I remember these. Notice that as we extend backward along the temporo-occipital border, there is a jugular foramen, jugular foramina, plural. These are the holes that drain the jugulars, the main veins that drain the brain. What do you call this big hole in the occipital bone back here? This is called the foramen magnum. Very good. And then also notice that there's a bone on the side of the skull, the parietal bone, that kind of extends upward and over the top of the cranial vault. This Crista Galli, the ethmoid bone, also has a perpendicular plate that extends downward that unites with the vomer to make a vertical plate in the middle of the nose. And also another thing that's kind of important to image in your brain is that the sphenoid bone can actually be viewed from the sides of the skull. It can be viewed through the orbits and on the inferior aspect, the bottom side of the skull as well. Marvelous, absolutely marvelous, simply marvelous estudiantes.